नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकाय चक्षुर्मृतं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टां स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश श्रीरूपां साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं स्वावधूतं परिजनासहितं श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादां सहगणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवली प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामने गौरतसे नमः। वंशकल्पातरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी विश्वभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Where is Abhishek? I need a mic. Mic. Hare Krishna. So, wait a second. We are reading from third canto, chapter number 26. Yeah, I can't speak much loudly. So it's a conversation. There is some terrible sound. Reservation is coming. Smartphone. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Mic. Fan makes a lot of sound and I can't speak loudly. So we have been discussing from third canto, chapter number 26, chapter number 21, 25, where Mother Devahuti asked questions to Kapila Dev, and 25th chapter onwards, Kapila Dev begins to give answers to Devahuti's questions. Chapter 26 began with second question, which was asked by Devahuti, and the 25th chapter was number 29. Is it looking at that quickly? Third canto, 25th chapter, verse number 29, Mother Devahuti said, the mystic yoga system, as you have explained, aims at the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is meant for completely ending material existence. Please let me know the nature of that yoga system. In other words, she wanted to ask about the mystic yoga system, and that's what Kapila Dev began to answer in 26th chapter from verse number 1 onward. So we read initially a few verses about Lord, Prakriti, Jiva, that relationship. I guess we covered our discussion until text number 4. I'll just read out the few translations and then begin discussion. So this is a highly technical subject which we have discussed in the past also. Hare Krishna. So reading a translation of 26th chapter, verse number 1 onward, is a highly technical subject. We have discussed this before in the second canto as well as in the initial third chapters about how the primary creation happened. That would be the discussion again. But let's take a look at things that we can understand easily and discuss. Verse number 1. The personality of Godhead Kapila continued. My dear mother, Gauranga, now I shall describe unto you the different categories of absolute truth, knowing which any person can be released from the influence of the modes of material nature. Text number 2. I shall also explain you about the supreme knowledge. Knowledge is the ultimate perfection of self-realization. I shall explain that knowledge unto you by which the knots of attachment to the material world are cut. And text number 3, then he began to speak about the characteristics of the Lord. So the next few verses will talk about, I guess I gave a whole elaborate discussion last time, Ishvaraha, Prakriti, and Jiva. What are the relationship between all three in that sense? So text number 3 talks about the characteristics of Ishvara, Anadir, Pratyak Dhama. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is a supreme soul, and he has no beginning. He is transcendental to the material modes of nature, Ishvara, Prakriti, Param, and beyond the existence of this material world. He is perceivable everywhere, Pratyak Dhama, because he is self-effulgent, and by his self-effulgent luster, the entire creation is maintained. This is just a recap. We have discussed it last time. And then what's the relationship between Lord and Prakriti? Text number 4. As his pastime, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, the greatest of the great, accepted the subtle material energy, which is invested with three modes of nature, which is related with Vishnu, like this. And Prabhupada gives a beautiful example, if you remember. By the way, does anyone remember anything from last class? We discussed only 3-4 verses of class. What are the relationship between Lord and Prakriti? We gave an analogy. Anyone remembers? At that point of time, last Friday morning, we had a class, right? I said, look outside the window, there is a sun shining. As example is given of the sun in relation to the Lord. The sun, by his sunshine, evaporates the ocean water, which turns into a cloud. So cloud is nothing but the energy of the Lord. And the same cloud for us, Jiva, hides the Lord. Similarly, what is the nature of Prakriti? Prakriti has knowledge covering potency. Just like the cloud for us covers the sun. Similarly, Prakriti, we discussed about the characteristics of Prakriti, if you remember. I guess I wrote things on the iPad, right? We explained that. So one of the characteristics of Prakriti is knowledge covering potency. It covers the knowledge of a living entity. The moment the living entity is invested in this world by the Lord, Aham Bij Prataha Pitaha, immediately this living entity gets covered by the modes of metalation. 7th chapter, verse number 13 and 14, we discuss that. Devi Yeshuguramayi Mama Maya. Prior to that, in the 13th verse, Krishna says, every living entity is covered over by my illusory energy. So there's a spell by which a living entity is influenced and cannot see. That's Prakriti. So that's Prakriti does it. Prakriti here, Kriyamanani, Guna Karmani, Sarvasha. And not only that, it is Prakriti. Everything is done by Prakriti. But we living entity feels under the influence of Ahankara that everything is done by me. I am the Karak, I am the Karanam, and I'm the Karta. I am the cause, I am the effect. Everything is considered by us as if everything is happening because of us. So these were the technicalities that this subject matter brings about. Then text number 5. This Prakriti divided into varieties by her threefold modes. Nature creates the forms of the living entities. The living entities seeing this are illusioned by the knowledge covering feature of the illusionary energy. And not only that, Prakriti has the knowledge covering potency. Prakriti is what gives us these forms. The forms that we have, this is also but nothing but the product of the Prakriti. So this is Sankhya. So the mystic yoga, the question that was asked by Mother Devhuti, so this is where the Sankhya. So we discussed entirely about Sankhya last time. How do we look at it? This is nothing but the combination of three modes of material nature. Karmana deva naitrena janturdeha utpatte. So a living entity is born based on his past karmic reactions under the direction dictation of the higher energies, which means our modes of combination are dependent on our past karmic reactions and the influence or the supervision of divine energy. Like that, we are born differently. Okay, that was text number 5. Text number 6. Because of his forgetfulness, this is about the living entity. The transcendental living entity accepts the influence of material energy as his field of activities, and thus actuated, he wrongly applies the activities to himself. What is the relationship between Prakriti and Jiva? What is the relationship between Prakriti and Jiva? इसलिए मैंने last time सब कुछ लिखा था, with the hope that you will write it down. Everything I wrote it down. I forgot to bring that. I was not even expecting to recap that. What is the relationship in Prakriti and Jiva? Hey, this is the ABCD of Bhagavad Gita.
Prakriti is the inferior energy of Lord and
Perfect. Prakriti is the inferior energy of the aparam. It's a stvanyam. Prakriti vidum. Prakriti vidhi me param. Jiva bhuta mahabhaho yedam dhar yate jagat. So living entity, para apara. There are two Shaktis. Bhumira panalo kamuna buddhirevacha ahankar ityamte bhinna prakritir ashada. So this matter is my inferior energy. Aparayam it's a stvanyam. Apara. But beyond this apara, there is another energy which is called as para, which is a superior energy. So we as a living entity being the super, we can say increase the speed of the fan now. Before I got the mic. So we as a superior energy is trying to exploit this Prakriti. Why are we trying to exploit Prakriti? Why are we trying to exploit Prakriti? Hey, this should not be second thought on you, this questions.
to
This should be
fulfill our desires, material desires. To
to
fulfill our material desires
fulfill our material desires. And why do you have material desires?
due to conditioning of the three modes of material nature.
I can't hear well. Can you increase the sound or this maximum?
Due to conditioning by the three modes of material nature.
So why do you have conditioning of three modes of material nature?
Due to our past deeds.
Huh?
Due to our past deeds. Past.
Why would we have past deeds if you are eternal living entity, part and parcel of the Lord, residing in the spiritual worlds? There's no question of past deeds then, right? Yes, the point is, and this is where the discussion between Purusha and Prakriti begins. Because Jiva wants to take the place of Purusha. And because Jiva wanted to become Purusha, who is a Purusha? Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Idam Bhava. So Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam. So Krishna is that Purusha, but living entity wants to experience that or wants to have that position. So this whole world has been created as a plaything. It's mentioned in one of the processes previously. This creation is nothing but a plaything of Krishna. Just like you go on the sandy beach, the child will take a sand and will create a castle, and then after time it goes away. Like there's a plaything for Krishna. So God has created this because we wanted to experience what it means to be Krishna. So now if you want to experience to be Krishna, you have to have Prakriti, na? Therefore, there is an inseparable attraction between this little Purusha and Prakriti. Therefore, as a sadhakas, how much ever we may know the subject matter of Sankhya, we may know man and woman body is nothing but made up of those three modes of material nature. There is nothing attractive. We discussed about the subject matter also last time. All that enjoying potency, we discussed that from, I believe, from the sixth canto, also the last chapter, where Brahmaji talks about why did he created the feminine form. And we discussed about all that also. We have discussed in the past. Yet after going through all the discussion, ye dil mange more. that attraction continues because there is a very deep-rooted attraction for Prakriti. Uh, Therefore, in the 15th chapter, verse number 1 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about it. It begins with talking about, not the first verse, second or the third verse, it talks about by the weapon or the sword of transcendental knowledge, Arjuna, cut the strong roots of attachment to material nature. So therefore, this cultivation of knowledge is essential for us to understand what is right, what is wrong, what is truth, what is false. So Jiva is caught up in this world because he wants to become Purusha. So therefore, the subject matter of false ego becomes very important. And this is what we're going to begin our discussion in a short while. All right, text number 7, Jiva becomes conditioned. Material consciousness is the cause of one's conditional life. So what is that conditional life? Is a material consciousness. What is material consciousness? To enjoy. No, to enjoy is not wrong. To enjoy is the nature of Atma, Satchit Ananda. But to enjoy Prakriti separately in the mood of, as I understand, is not about enjoyment, it's about exploitation. So anything that we do in this world is not about enjoyment, it's only about exploitation. What was the example we discussed last time? It's not about enjoyment, it's only about exploitation. We may call it enjoying, but it's never about enjoyment, it's only about exploitation. What is that? Because our nature is to enjoy. So it's not that enjoyment is prohibited, but the problem is we are into exploitation. And the example I gave was before we came to Krishna consciousness, the relationship between a boyfriend and girlfriend, we call it as a love. But after coming to Krishna consciousness, reading Prabhupada's books, then we call it as a lust. Yes or no? Now our entire perspective changed. Now, why do you call it lust? It's the same thing what was happening before. But now we say no. They both are trying to exploit each other. So in terms of when you call it material consciousness, there's no question of enjoyment. It's only a subject matter of exploitation. And that is what Krishna says. Yayedam dharate jagat. The living entity is trying to control dharate jagat, this material energy. For what purpose? For the sake of exploitation. Yes or no? Just for us for a second. What is happening around in the creation? Employer, employee. Yet, the same relationship continues. You go to the shopkeeper, there's hardly a subject of fixed price. Looking at which car or which bike you've got down, the prices ranges, changes like that. So it's this when the moment a conditioned living entity wakes up in the morning, his consciousness begins to scan the environment only for one thing. That is, how can I exploit? And we have given it a different word. How can I enjoy? Now, when you see from the perspective, how can I enjoy? And then we say, don't do it. They say, Are, how can we live? So therefore, when Prabhupada said, follow four regular principles, so then, question was, Are, how can I live? Fourth principle, how can I give a fourth principle? But the fourth principle, relationship with man and woman coming together is for the purpose of procreation. Otherwise, it is only meant for exploitation. So procreation is not prohibited. The idea is through that, the greater joy is not in the act of copulation. The greater joy the mother and father experience is having a son and daughter, raising them, taking care of them. You can go and ask your parents. Because the act of copulation is a momentary fraction. But what actually they want is to have a child. Mother longs for a child, father longs for a child. If not, at least grandparents definitely longs for a grandson or granddaughter. So that is what the joy is. So that is not prohibited. So from this perspective, look at it. In spiritual life, enjoyment is not prohibited. What is prohibited? So we are supposed to change our consciousness from exploitation to enjoyment. And therefore, how do you change from exploitation to enjoyment? This is all I'm doing a recap, whatever I can remember while speaking spontaneously. How do you change from exploitation to enjoyment? What is the process given for that?
Krishna consciousness.
What is the process given? Yeah, that's the Brahmastra, Krishna consciousness. Say further.
Desire to serve.
Huh?
Desire to serve.
Is serve. Desire to serve is okay, but service. Therefore, Prabhupada defined bhakti as devotional service. So we have to get this word seva in our mind, in our consciousness. The more we cultivate. So what is the process of bhakti? We are cultivating service attitude. And the more we have service attitude, the more attentive we'll be in chanting. Because if you're not attentive in chanting, why we're not attentive in chanting? Because we also want to enjoy chanting. That enjoyment, the moment for a conditioned living entity, the word enjoyment comes, please mark it for yourself. It's not our enjoyment. We want to exploit. We want to exploit. So we want the Lord to give us pleasure, but actually we are supposed to give pleasure to the Lord. That's the purpose of chanting Hare Krishna. My dear Srimati Radharani and Krishna, kindly engage me in your devotion service. That is seva. But what we do, we want to exploit the moment we say we want to enjoy. Therefore, saying that, oh, I'm not, I'm not getting this sense of enjoyment in chanting. Hey, that is not meant for you. That is supposed to be for the Lord. You're supposed to chant in the mood of service to give pleasure to the Lord. So this exploitative mentality, it takes a long, long time to really transform and move forward to Seva Bhav. And that is the principle of Sharnagrati, like that. Okay? Then text number 8. The cause of the conditioned soul's material body and senses, presiding deities, the devtas, the material nature, this is understood by learned man. The feelings of happiness, distress of the soul, who is transcendental by nature, are all caused by the spirit, soul himself. So, the cause of the action is Prakriti. The cause of the suffering of happiness is, I'll repeat again. The cause of the activity is Prakriti. Prakriti kriyamanani guna karmani sarvasha. The cause of suffering or happiness is
Purusha.
Desires.
Which Purusha? Little Purusha, big Purusha?
Little.
Yes, Jivatma. You can call it Jivatma for the sake of discussion. So Jivatma. Why Jivatma? Because Jivatma has only one thing under its control and influence. Last night I was reading a little snippet of one book. It's a book of 100 plus quotes. It's written by a very famous author. Why I started reading? Because there was a particular section where he mentioned something very interesting. He said the living entity, he didn't say living entity, he said we as individual only have one control or one influence, and that is on our desire. He understood Bhagavad Gita, huh? He has no idea. This is completely managerial leadership book, huh? For mundane leadership principles or how to become successful like that. He said we only have one influence in our life, and the influence on what we want. So these days, motivational speaker talk about rather than changing the world, change yourself, make an effort. I said, yeah, this is what Bhagavad Gita talks about, what Scripture talks about. All right, text number 9, Devati, then she asked the question, what is the relationship between nature and Lord? Devati said, oh, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu is Kapaladev, kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme Person and his energies. For both of these are the causes of this manifest and unmanifest creation. Hare Krishna. So here Devati is asking about Purusha and Prakriti, and then Purusha, Prakriti and their characteristics, and through this Purusha and Prakriti, how this creation have manifested. So from text number 10 onwards, I am not going to go in discussion of this. This will become very technical, and because I have discussed this in the past few times, I'm going to skip this, but just to summarize this is the discussion, 14th chapter, where Krishna says 14.4, Aham bij pratah pitah. I with my glance impregnate the Prakriti, and that's how the living entities are born in this creation. This subject matter, what is from text number 10, is nothing but the elaboration of that particular verse, where how Purusha and Prakriti interacts with each other, how living entity are invested into this material nature, how Pradhan, how Mahatattva, then how Virat Purush, the Hiranmaya, Golden Egg, all those technical terms have been described here. All right, then how false ego is created, then for false ego, then how Sattva, and under the influence of Sattva good, Rajagun, Tamagun, mind, intelligence, senses, matter, that's all is created, that's the subject matter. So this is fundamental principles of material nature. I'll do this elaborately in Bhakti Vaibhava program, but I'll move forward to chapter number 27. All right. Let's begin with 27th chapter. Text number 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prakriti Purusho Nachate Prakrite Gunahe Avikarat akartatvam nirgunatva jalakavat. Lord Kapila continued. When the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature, because he is unchanging, does not claim proprietorship, he remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in a material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on the water. This sun is such a favorite example of, again and again it repeats in Bhagavatam in different perspective and context. Have we discussed that beautiful analogy? I believe that has been discussed already. The analogy of sun and its sunshine reflecting in the water and what it means. Anyone remembers that? I believe that we have covered already. Anyways, I'll not go too much in recap. All right, so what is it mentioned here from verse number 1 to verse number 5? There is a discussion about Jiva's interaction along with the modes of material nature. So in the first verse, it is mentioned how a living entity can remain aloof from the modes. The first thing is he does not claim to be a proprietor. The moment you don't claim to be a proprietor or the karta, then you don't get affected by the results. And that's how one can remain unaffected by the modes of material nature. This is one of the things mentioned. Text number 2. Saishayarhi prakriti guneshu abhivisachate aham kriya vimudhatma karta smriti abhimanyate. When the soul is under the spell of material nature and false ego, identifying his body as a self, he becomes absorbed in material activities, and by the influence of false ego, he thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. There's a terminology that comes in Bhagavatam called as, okay, before I say that, let me ask this. A living entity under the illusion or influence of material nature and false ego, which means misidentifies with the body, he becomes absorbed in material activities. How does, let's talk about for our devotees who knows this concept of Jiva, Prakriti, Purusha. My question is, despite knowing this fact, Jiva, Prakriti, Purusha, how Jiva is part and parcel of the Lord, Prakriti is also energy of the Lord, Jiva is also energy of the Lord, how Jiva, which means we as devotees, are still continue struggling with this understanding. And it's very difficult to rise above this material conditionings. What is that one factor? What is that one factor which keeps us bound to Prakriti, material nature? What is that one factor? Yes? False ego. Well, false ego is the root of it. Misidentification, correct. The enjoyment propensity. You're getting close. Go more specific. What else? The desires, okay, that's go for okay, we have bewildered and all that. How does it manifest? And it manifests, and that's what the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita is largely, if you see. And that is karmatmakam buddhi. What is that? Karmatmakam buddhi. Intelligence. Karmatmakam buddhi means Hare Krishna. Something going on? अच्छा अभी तक आया नहीं okay anyways what else
has a spiritual mentality for working, but wants to learn. Pushkaran Yoga is not ready, but he is ready to offer the fruits. Sakam Yoga also offers. He has what he wants. He offers.
Also does what he wants to do, but he offers everything. So if you see, results have been offered, but the propensity to engage according to one's nature, that is not given up. And that is the most difficult thing to give up. Therefore, when you read, so I'll just repeat what Ishan was saying. Sakama Karma Yoga, you perform action with the desire to enjoy. And because you call Sakama Karma Yoga, you also give some of the results in the service of the Lord. Nishakama Karma Yoga, which means now you dedicate the results in the service of the Lord. But the nature to do action, that doesn't go away. And nature according to, and how? As I want to do it, according to, my propensity. And therefore, there's a Varnashram Dharma has been established, which is a means of gradual purification, because we cannot give up a propensity to work, because we are conditioned. And therefore, Krishna also created Chaturvarnya, Maya Shashtam, Guna Karma. Because of your psychological disposition, you have particular nature and you should function according to that. And through this Nishkam Karma, Sakam to Nishkam Karma Yoga, gradually get purified, move to Jnana and Ashtanga and Bhakti Yoga like that. So what keeps us bound? And therefore, when you read in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, there's a top to bottom hierarchy. What is the topmost hierarchy? Where a person with his mind completely absorbed in the remembrance of the Lord. Then when you cannot do that much, at least engage everything for the pleasure of the Lord, which means do service as required. Well, if you cannot do that, that's sannyasi brahmachari life. And if you cannot do it, at least dedicate some results in the service of the Lord. You see the gradations? The gradation exists like that. So this whole, what binds us, of course, this cannot be given up, but this needs to be purified. And therefore, Prabhupada often repeats, it's a gradual process. So one very severe conditioning that we have is the way we want to engage ourselves, karma, how we perform our karma. And we're not supposed to give it up. Prabhupada says, dovetail it, engage in the service of the Lord. So that's the idea, identifying his body as a self, he becomes absorbed. Now, what happens is, even if you're asked to dovetail, but then it takes a good amount of purification of the consciousness, the moment we engage, okay, let me put it this way. Do you see a clear line of difference here or not? If in case you have been told to do something and you do that much, or you do whatever is told to do, and whatever result is produced, you can very easily say, well, मैंने क्या करा है, सब प्रभु की इच्छा है, उन्होंने कहा, मैंने करा, फल मिल गया. That is one way of. Imagine you do what you want to do, and then you give certain amount of result. Where do you think mamatva would be more stronger? In the first or in the second? Because I did what I wanted to do, and then I give the result. It also leads to a sense of pride that I am doing. Who produced the result? I produced. But when we are told to do something and we do it, then it's very easy to say, what is my doing? It's all mercy. Is that making sense? So this is little differences here that happen. So because of this, the living entity continues identifying. What was the verse? Text number 2. Text number 3. Tena samsara padavim avashobhyenivrataha prasangi kai karmadoshihi sadasan mishrayonishu. The conditioned soul therefore migrates into different species of life. Samsara chakra etasmin jantu deha utpatti, like that. No, akyana mohita. Higher and lower because of his association with the modes of material nature. Unless he is relieved of material activities, he has to accept his position because of his faulty work. Like that. Sometimes take birth in a heavenly planets, and then sometimes take birth in lower species. Text number 4. Actually, living entity is transcendental to material existence, Jivatma. But because of his mentality of lording it over material nature. What is that lording over material nature? Yayedam dharyate jagats. Now we should remember this, which means lording it over material nature means want to exploit, want to control. His material existential condition does not cease. Just as in a dream, he is affected by all sort of disadvantages. Actually, I'm not referring purport here in this particular chapter because I'm just reading along with all of you right now, and apparently I have also not made any notes before. Maybe I have not spoken on it before or something, because generally I have, my notes or marking on Prabhupada purport. So therefore, I'm kind of skipping through purport right now because there's no marks in my book. Probably have not, marked while reading before. Anyways, so we're talking about the fourth verse, right? Because of his mentality of lording it over. So let's take a look at the first paragraph of the purport. The example of dream is very appropriate. Due to different mental conditions in dreams, we are put into advantageous and disadvantageous position. Similarly, the spiritual has nothing to do with his material nature, but because of his mentality of lording it over, is put into the position of conditional existence. Prabhupada writes something very interesting on the subject matter of proprietorship. Let's take a look at it. In the middle of the purport, Prabhupada says, who is the proprietor? Bhoktanam Yaganatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshram. Sudam Sarvabhutanam Gyantamam Shanti. So who is the proprietor? Krishna. Krishna is the actual friend of all living entities. But instead of leaving proprietorship, enjoyment, and actual position as a friend of all living entities to Supreme Person Godhead, we claim that we are the proprietors, enjoyers, and the friends. And Prabhupada writes, how we claim that? We perform philanthropic work, thinking that we are the friends of human society. Someone may proclaim himself to be a very good national worker, the best friend of the people and of the country. But actually, he cannot be the greatest friend of everyone. The only friend is Krishna. One should try to raise the consciousness of the conditioned soul to the platform of understanding that Krishna is his actual friend. If one makes friendship with Krishna, one will never be cheated, and he will get all help needed. Arousing this consciousness of the conditioned soul is the greatest service, not posing oneself as a great friend of another living entity. Is a very important point. I'll quote a conversation here. Once a devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada should, some of you might have heard of it from me before. If you have heard it, don't answer. Okay? I want those who have not heard it to think about it. Should a devotee save a drowning man? So those who have heard it, zip it. Don't utter a word. And those who are hearing it for the first time, this conversation now. So what do you think? Should a devotee save a drowning man? Yes or no? Hey, तुम लोग गर्मी में परेशान हो जाओगे अंदर? Are you okay? Otherwise, open the window and you'll feel suffocating. Yes. Anyone? What do you think? This is a question for adults. Kids? All right. How many of you, again, those who know this, you're not interacting at all. So those of you who don't know this, what do you think? Say me quickly. Yes, devotee should save a drowning man. Of course, after what I just read here, now you'll be thinking, Arey, sahi hai, galat hai. I should have asked you before actually. So how many of you think devotee should save a drowning person? Raise your hand, high up. अरे इतने insensitive हो गए मत, इतने कम हाथ केवल, मरने दो दुनिया को. Okay, how many of you think no, devotee should not save a drowning person? How many of you know I got nothing to do with anyone? जियो या मरो, मुझे अपना जीने दो. कुछ तो ऐसी लग रहा है यहाँ पर. You're good to become Naga Baba. Go to the forest now. Baba, you got nothing to do with anything. Okay, so those of you who do not want to save, please justify, because this is highly inappropriate. How can you not save a drowning person? Don't say that you don't know swimming, huh? This is assumed you know swimming and then you're not saving. Don't give that kind of lame excuse here. So you assumed you know swimming and yet you're not saving a drowning man. What is your reason? Those who said no, would like to say? Yes, Abhay. He may be, na. But what if he is a sadhu? What if he is a good person? All right. Philosophically, you're a student of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, philosophically speak about it. What? Why not? Anyone online? Or all the online audience have heard this example before? What do you say? Anyone online would like to say, if in case you know swimming, should a drowning person be saved or not? A very interesting concept. We'll read it again. Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suhidam Sarva Bhutana. Who is actual friend for all? Because we want to be Krishna, we also want to be in that position. We want to be a benefactor for others. Therefore, Prabhupada is saying, how do people exercise that? By doing philanthropic activity. But what exactly they're doing, they're trying to take the place of Krishna. Now, does ISKCON do philanthropic work? Yes, it does. It does food for life. But we just don't give food. We give prasadam for life. Outside, we don't call it food for life. We distribute prasadam. So even when we are giving food, we are giving prasadam, which means we are invoking Krishna consciousness in them. Any and every act of charity that we do, that is just to bring them closer to Krishna. Yes or no? So that means that is beyond envy. We're not envious. But when there is no Krishna, then we become a direct competitor. So Prabhupada writes here also, who is the only true friend? Krishna. Why? Who is providing for all living entities? You may say one drowning man and woman, somebody, but who's protecting everyone? So now, what did Prabhupada say? Prabhupada answered, let's come to Prabhupada answer. Prabhupada said, what do you think Prabhupada would have said? Prabhupada said, no. Now Prabhupada, everybody right? Prabhupada, why no? Prabhupada said, well, Prabhupada didn't mean that way, no. Just philosophically to answer that. Prabhupada said, see, everyone is bound by their own laws of, bound by their own karma. And everyone is reaping the result of their own karma. One should not interfere in other karmic reaction and entangle oneself in others' karmic reaction. This is, again, let me just go back to Sankhya again, which means technicality here. Every living entity, we understand law of karma. So every living entity is acting according to whatever is happening in their life, circumstances produced in their life is all because of their karmic reactions. Now, I'm not speaking in a devotee circle, we should not say, devotees should be. I'm talking about outsiders. Please draw this. ऐसे ना हो कल मायापुर में किसी भक्त को चीखते हुए देखो तो बोले what is that? कर्मणा देव नेतरे something कर्मा का प्रश्न सुनाना शुरू कर दो. This is about, we should not unnecessarily entangle. Just like, Abhay made actually a valid point. He may be, maybe not. We don't know who is he. So we don't know what kind of life he is living. So we should not entangle another in someone else's karmic reaction. Because whatever circumstances produced in his or her life, is it happening randomly or is the will of providence? Is it random or will of providence? So why are you interfering in the will of providence? Yes or no? Nimitta matram avasavesachi. We are supposed to become an instrument to follow the will of the providence. I'm not saying now you drown that person further. I'm going to say. So that's how Prabhupada was technically. If you have a capacity, do help, extend your help. But while doing that, do not forget your own protection. Because oftentimes it is said, it is seen when somebody is drowning, that person is survived, but the one who jumped to save the drowning man, he drowned. No, this is a fact. When you go to Mayapur, we hear this many examples like this. So be careful not to entangle yourself in such a way that you lose the opportunity to practice Krishna consciousness. What is that? Dullabham manusham, manusham janma. Prahlad Maharaj says, not Prahlad Maharaj, this is Nadmani says. Why? Prahlad Maharaj only says why to practice to bhakti, because this Manusha Janma is very dullabh like that. So that's the point which is mentioned here. We perform philanthropy work thinking that we are the friends of human society. Someone may proclaim himself to be a very good national worker, the best friend of the people and of the country, but actually he cannot be the greatest friend of everyone. The only friend is Krishna. We should try to raise the consciousness of the conditioned soul to the platform understanding that Krishna is his actual friend. So you see, in anything and everything that we engage, as Srila Prabhupada have engaged us, every activity of ours is directly, indirectly is helped to bring Krishna to in his life. Yes or no? either through Sankirtan, prasadam distribution, Sunday feast, opening temples, everything is related to awakening Krishna consciousness and spiritual consciousness. Although one claims to be a friend, he cannot be a friend unlimitedly. There are unlimited number of living entities and our resources are limited, therefore we cannot be of any real benefit to the people in general. The best service to the people in general is to awaken them to Krishna consciousness so that they may know the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, the supreme friend is Krishna. Alright, our senior batch. So what did Prahlad Maharaj says? What is the best form of education? Who remembers? What is the best form of education? That's what is happening here. The best service to the people in general is to awaken them to Krishna consciousness so that they may know that the supreme enjoyer, proprietor, friend is Krishna. So, what is the best form of education? Yes? Sanskrit bolo yaar. No, I mean to say, quote the shloka. Where? Yes, Partha. No. Best form of education. Yes, Prahlad. No. Yes, Shavanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Pada Sevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. But not the complete answer. The complete answer is the verse after that. Who remembers the verse after that? Yes, Iti Pumsakata Vishnuhu, Bhaktischem Nava Lakshanaha. Then, Kriyete Bhagavati Adha. Tanmane, according to me, Aditat Uttamam. The best education is to engage everyone in 9 limbs of devotional service. This is what Prahlad Maharaj said. And this is what Prabhupada is saying here. So what we have to do is, by every endeavor that we engage, we have to awaken or help people develop Krishna consciousness. Then only you can act as his true friend. And remember the famous example Prabhupada gives, let's say Ambani's son has been lost, and you are a dear friend of Ambani, and you're traveling on a street, and you come at a signal, and you see a beggar knocking on your window, and you realize he's the son of Ambani, a long lost son of Ambani. There are 3 things you can do. You can give him some money and drive your car away, or you can give him a lot of money, or get him admitted into some school and take care of his education so that he can stand on his feet. Or you can do the 3rd thing. What was the 3rd option Prabhupada said? Bring him back to his father. This is what is being discussed here. Right? Bring him back to his father, because once you bring him back to his father, do you have to do anything? Nothing. And among the 3, what is the best service you can do it? Giving some charity doesn't serve, because it will get over. Giving him education, he still has to struggle. But if he realizes and goes back to his father, he is the son of the richest person, he doesn't have to do anything. The cycle of karma, once for all, ends, which means going back to Godhead. That's the point that's been discussed here. Text number 5. Ataiva shanneschittam prashaktam asatam pati vakti yogena tivrena virattaya cha nayadvasham. It is the duty of every conditioned soul to engage his polluted consciousness, which is now attached to material enjoyment, in very serious devotional service with detachment. Thus his mind and consciousness will be under full control. Yeah, these are purport which cannot miss. Next time I will make sure I have read that section. So I'm surprised I'm not marked it. I'll read this purport because all these purports are fantastic. The process of liberation is very nicely explained in this verse. The cause of one's becoming conditioned by material nature is his thinking, I am the enjoyer, proprietor and friend of all living entities. This false thinking is a result of contemplation of sense enjoyment. When one thinks that he is the best friend to his countrymen, to society, humanity, he engages in various nationalistic, philanthropic, altruistic activities. All that is just so much concentration on sense gratification. Election time is going on right now, The so-called national leader, humanist, does not serve everyone. He serves his senses only. But it doesn't mean that you don't exercise your, ability to vote, to choose the right leader. That we should do that. But the conditioned soul cannot understand this because it is bewildered by the spell of material nature. Therefore, recommended this verse that one engage very seriously in the devotional service of the Lord. Anyways, So it is the duty of every living entity to engage his polluted consciousness in devotional service with detachment. Thus his mind and consciousness will be under full control. Put any one of you, because we are in the third canto, literally half of the third canto, not half, major part of the third canto is over. We have read Bhagavad Gita, most of you have done Bhakti Shastri also. With detachment, what would you like to say on this word detachment? Engaging in devotional life with detachment. Some practical points here. Any thoughts? Engaging in bhakti with detachment. Yes, Isha? Huh? Okay, follow. All right. Follow the authority. Very nice. What else? With detachment. Any other thing that comes to your mind? Yes, Ritesh?
Detachment to results and attachment to Krishna.
Okay, very nice. Detachment from the result, depending on the result, on the mercy of the Lord, accepting it, not giving it up. Anything else with detachment? These are all correct answers. What else would detachment means? Yes, Shubham Prabhu?
Detachment is a thought that by practicing devotional service I will get Krishna. It depends on Krishna's mercy.
All right. So, more or less, it boils down to controller, proprietor, enjoyship. Now you're talking controllership, that I control. Ha. That's what, controllership. That, I can do something what I want to do. So, in that way. All right. Okay. Let's move forward. Text number 6. Yamadibhir yogapate abhyasan shraddhayanvitaha mai bhavena satyena matkata shavanena cha. One has to become faithful by practicing the controlling process of the yoga system, must elevate himself to the platform, unalloyed devotional service with chanting and hearing about him. About me, text number 7. Important verse, please repeat. Sarva bhuta samatvena nirvairena prasangataha brahmacharena maunena swadharmena baliyasa. In executing bhakti, one has to see every living entity equally. Sarva bhuta samatvena. Without enmity towards anyone. Without enmity towards anyone. Nirvaina. Where? Without enmity. Nirvaina. Without intimate connections with anyone. Aprasangataha. So we should not be envious of anyone. We should not be attached to anyone. Brahmacharena, by celibacy. Maunena, by silence. Swadharmena, according to one's occupation. Baliyasa, and offering one's result in the service of the Lord. Most of the things have been discussed in the past also. Just one thing which we'd like to discuss here. Nirvairena and prasangataha. Nirvaira should not have any enemy and should not be attached to anyone. Now, attachment, as we understand, we should be attached to devotees, Guru Guranga. That is all bona fide. But one should not be attached to anyone else and one should not have any animosity towards anyone. What does it mean? One should not have any animosity towards anyone. Yes. Correct. We should see on the platform of soul. Well, that's going to take time, and that's a realization which will be given to us when we are qualified. But we can still practice not having animosity towards anyone. Why it is important? The devotees, or one as an individual, we should not have any hatred, malice towards anyone. The reason is the attraction and aversion are the two sides of the same coin. As much as we should not have attraction, similarly we should not have aversion, because both of it will keep us bound to this world. So as a devotees, we should not have. Therefore, forget about outsiders. At times, while living in a devotee community, sometimes we develop aversion to certain individuals within the community oneself. Particularly if you are in a manager role, running manager responsibility, you will be forced to come into certain circumstances where people may not behave properly to you, may not be obedient to you, many things may happen. And at times they may speak ill about you, etc., etc. But it's a very natural for a human being to feel little, upset about that person who is spreading ill fame or who is speaking ill about you, isn't it? But the point is, even we cannot have ill feelings for that person also, because we only obstruct our progress. Because the nature of the mind is sankalpa vikalpa, and we remain caught in the modes of material nature. So that's the point here. Nirvena prasangataha. One should not have any animosity towards anyone. Prasangataha. And that is only possible when we have the ability to tolerate. Therefore, Krishna, very first in the instruction, says, as long as you are in the material world, tolerance would be really, really tested. And cultivating forgiveness. Let's take our last verse for today. Another very important verse. Let's read. Yadrachaya papalbadena santushto mit bhunmunihi vivikta sharanaha shanto maitra karunatmavan. For his income, a devotee should be satisfied what he earns without great difficulty. Yadrachaya upal badena. Yadrachaya means without difficulty. One should be satisfied what he earns without difficulty. He should not eat more than what is necessary. Santushto mit bhuk, which means be content. Little eating is mentioned. Mit means little. Munihi. Then Vivikta Sharana. Let's not take about word. Let's go. He should live in a secluded place, always be thoughtful, peaceful, friendly, compassionate, and self-realized. This will take a little while to discuss all this thing. This is again the elements which have been discussed in Bhagavad Gita also. If anyone has any particular point to mention or want to clarify something, then we can discuss that. Otherwise, self-explanatory, this is the same thing Prabhupada writing which he has written in the Bhagavad Gita also in these qualities. Yes, Isha. We can discuss if in case any point needs to be discussed. Yes? Maitraha, which means a devotee is friend to all. Again, the previous verse, he does not have animosity. So he does not. His friend to all means he is compassionate to all. If anyone is interested or shows any sign of interest in Krishna consciousness, he extends himself to Krishna consciousness. He's friend like that. So a friend is opposite to one who exploits. And a friend means he is not looking for something for my return. A friend means who serves. So it's friend to all, like that. So the concept over there, the friendly is that I am the friend. But here friendship, this is a subject matter, that was subject matter for a conditioned living entity. A conditioned living entity governed by the idea, I am the controller, proprietor, enjoyer. And this is the subject matter for a devotee. So devotee is also a friend. A friend in the sense, as I said, we also do charitable tasks, food for life. So you may say, Prabhupada saying charitable tasks should not be done. So why are we doing? But what are we doing? We're giving Krishna consciousness. A devotee is also a friend, which means he is willing to, extend himself to give Krishna consciousness to them in that context. So the context here is of a devotee, and the context there was of a conditioned living entity. When a devotee is discussed, the platform is of seva. Somehow, how can I connect to Krishna? And the platform conditioned living entity is to how can I continue to exploit. All right? Okay, so this is. Let's take one or two verses. Up to 10th verse, we'll pause after that. Sanubande cha dehasmin akurvan asat agraham jnanena dashta tatvena prakriti purushasya cha. One's seeing power should be increased through knowledge of spirit and matter. One should not unnecessarily identify himself with the body and thus become attracted by bodily relationship. Text number 10. Nivritta buddhi avasthano duri bhutane darshanaha upalabhyatma atmanatmanam chakshu sevarkam atmadrak. One should be situated in a transcendental position beyond the stages of material consciousness. One should be aloof from other conceptions of life. Thus, realizing freedom from false ego, one should see his own self just as he sees the sun in the sky. This is something which in the 6th chapter, Yoga Rudho, there are two kinds of yogis. Advanced yogi has been defined. So those characteristics are being mentioned here. So we'll continue with this discussion from verse number 11 onwards, where the qualities of liberated person will be discussed further like that. Let me give you just what is the overview of this chapter. One second. Let me put a marker for myself. We're supposed to read from 11th verse, right? So this chapter, Understanding Material Nature, has 30 verses. So we talked about Jiva in the conditioned state in the first 5 verses. Verse number 6 to 11 was discussion about attaining liberation by this mystic yoga, which has been discussed. And then 12 to 13 verse will talk about how to understand the presence of soul and super soul, and what is the nature of the soul when it is beyond the material covering. That will be discussed by Kapiladev. And then 17th verse onward becomes an interesting discussion where Devuti would ask, very famous verses, will ask about the rarity of liberation. And then 21st verse onward begins a discussion on bhakti, that moksha which is very rare. There are 5 kinds of moksha will be discussed, and that one we don't, which moksha we don't accept or we don't talk about? Yeah, what's the Sanskrit word? Sayuj, correct. That will be discussed here. And then Krishna Kapil, they would talk about I only award bhakti, like that. We'll take a discussion. It will be a very beautiful section. 17th verse onward, particularly how the Lord awards bhakti, how bhakti is the highest, and bhakti is only in true sense a liberation, like that. Alright, with that we pause here. Again, the discussion on this subject matter was also about Jiva within the control of modes of material nature, how he acts, and how one should protect himself from the influence of modes of material nature. So we discuss few things. We have this karmatmakam buddhi that pushes us to perform action, and as we are gradually purified for karma yoga to jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga to bhakti yoga. What is bhakti yoga? To directly engage in devotional service. In karma yoga, that's not exactly what happens. In karma yoga, you dedicate the results of your service and the fruits in the service of the Lord. Jnana and ashtanga yoga, you dedicate the function of your mind, and ashtanga yoga the function of intelligence, that is dhyana, like that. And bhakti, prana, artha, dhiya, vacha, everything is engaged in the service of the Lord, like that. So, well, I don't want to make it difficult. Are we practicing bhakti or karma yoga now? From this definition, then it becomes a little tricky. What are we? Well, we are practicing bhakti yoga. How? We are practicing bhakti at the sadhaka stage, where we have a fixed amount of chanting the holy names of the Lord, devotional service, and then we also have our work to maintain our body. And that is like kind of karma yoga, when we use the results of that in the service of the Lord. Hare Krishna, like that. All right. Now, anyone has any comments or clarification on this? The subject matter of Sankhya is such, it's a little tricky, but nonetheless, it's interesting. Yes, Ritesh, you want to say something?
In the text over it is mentioned that one should live in a secluded place.
Yeah, the same thing is mentioned in past. What does same thing comes in Bhagavad Gita also? What does it mean by living in a secluded place?
Living with devotees.
Yes, you're living in a secluded place. I mean, the moment you enter this floor, doesn't it look secluded? I mean, it looks like you're totally disconnected. We have our friends who are visiting here. You're staying outside, right? So doesn't it look like secluded? Entirely cut off of what's happening outside, like that way. So secluded that way. Means away from the association of materialists. All right? Okay, Mother Seema, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
A little louder, please.
Yes. So, we are attached to chanting early in the
Abhishek,
morning.
Can
you hear me?
Speaker ka awaaz. Is this full? Zoom camera bhi full hai?
Sorry. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mother.
So, like we are attached to chanting in the morning hours.
Okay.
And suppose the pujari of the temple comes and tells me to do some physical seva for the
Okay.
deities. Now, what shall I do?
Oh, interesting question. Let me just paraphrase what mother is saying so I've understood. Kids can go if you want, they can go for their prasadam. So, offering नहीं हुई? Oh, हरी बोल बैठे रहो. मेरे को 9 लगा तो मुझे लगा offering show. ठीक, anyways, what I was saying, the question my mother is asking, I like to chant in the morning hours, but one fine morning a pujari comes and says, well, we need you to do some service right now in the kitchen. Cook bhoga for the Lord. Is that okay, mother? So what should I do? What do you think? What should you do? You like to chant. Chanting is said to be the highest act of devotional service. Mother ne liya bhi ke extreme exception hai. Okay, what do you say? What should be done? Okay, let me put it this way. Rather than asking this question this way, yes or no. How many of you say we should get up and walk for the service? Please raise your hand. Okay, how many of you say chanting first, everything later? How many of you say chanting first, everything later? अबे सबके हाथ तो खड़े नहीं होते. कोई और भी ऑप्शन है क्या? What is the third option? Okay, that is happening regularly. Okay. Let's go to this question only. Well, in that case, ideally we should get up for the service and go and render the service. And maybe we can ask what happened. This probably is an exception where somebody has not come for the prescribed seva, and deities have to be served. That cannot happen. So that is the thing. Now, Tushar is raising a question. Tushar was saying, what if that happens regularly? Then it's a good thing that you go and now meet the manager. Bolo bhai, iske sam kuch gadbad hai. He doesn't know how to manage his service, and suddenly every day, almost on every day basis, he randomly catches, and that really causes an obstruction. So then we can have a discussion. But if it's once in a while, then we should get up and end the service. All right, mother?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Hare Krishna. So we conclude here for today. Jagadu Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask one question. Can we get the Veda base for the summary for these chapters?
What is that?
The summary, the gist of the chapters, are we getting in the Veda base?
It depends if it has or not. I'm not sure. I don't have a computer in front of me. I have a hard copy here. So it is something, if it has been written, it will have. I don't think so. This chapter, this third canto has. It doesn't have.
Hare Krishna.
All right. Hare Krishna. Hey kids. Hey Abhishek.